Welcome in everyone to another edition of the 70 Chip Cast. I am Robson Vire. That is Ben Parker. Welcome into the Pro Football Enterprises YouTube channel. If you're not already, please hit subscribe there. Set notifications for anytime Ben releases new content on the channel here. It's great stuff that Ben is putting out. Ben, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Listen, the season was not what any of us wanted it to be. We're well into the off season already, making all kind of plans, and we are so excited to be talking about all kinds of stuff all off season, and especially tonight. We've got three different things to pull from here. Some things happening, some things we're just planning for. But I'm excited to be here. Thank you everybody for watching. And Robertson, let's get it rolling, man.
Yeah, it's a packed show tonight. First, the biggest news is Daronte Jones, for Minnesota Vikings secondary coach, has been hired as the new defense coordinator. So Dan Quinn is rolling with two brand new, no experience coordinators. It's a very interesting move. I actually like this move for a couple reasons. One is that it's not like David Blau, where this guy's been in coaching for like 2 years, right? This guy's been around for like 15, 20 years, right? Just as at different stops, on both levels, college and pros, at different positions. And he's gotten several different interviews from several different teams. So there was clearly interest there. It wasn't like we were the only ones. And many people are saying, like, yeah, this was bound to happen at some point. Some people even said, it's past due. He should have been one defense coordinator already. So that kind of gives me some, cause for optimism. And then two, which I think is the most important part here is, look, we had interviewed Brian Flores, and there was a lot of talk, there was a lot of buzz, as fans well know, that, like, don't let Flores leave the building, but, he had gotten head coaching interviews that he wasn't going to pass up to be a DC here, and Minnesota either offered him a lot more money or, he just wanted to stay in Minnesota because he has a lot better of a opportunity there than, quite frankly, he does here. Because just look at the defense he has in Minnesota versus what's here. Let, let's be honest with ourselves. We don't have a great situation right now. You got a defensive head coach, and you have the cupboards are bare on defense. Okay, so that's not exactly for a guy like Brian Flores, a very attractive situation. So even though he stayed at DC, why would you come here when you have all the guys that you're already familiar with, that you have success with? Why would you leave that? I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. But we've got a guy from his staff. So we clearly liked Brian Flores, we wanted to bring him in. So we pulled a guy from his staff if we couldn't get him. And these are guys that Jones has coached under, Brian Flores, namely Vance Joseph, who, if you haven't been paying attention, has kind of a heck of a defense out there in Denver and has had really great defenses over the past 10 or so years. Mike Zimmer, who, he was in Minnesota as well for a very long time, had reasonably productive defenses, and Marvin Lewis, was once a defensive coordinator here in Washington, and had very successful defenses at times in Cincinnati. So, and the thing that obviously John Keim here has pointed out is that they've all been aggressive, and they've all had a a uh, a focus on the pass rush. Okay, that we need a solid pass rush, and that's going to drive everything. Now, this is a secondary coach, right? And there just happens to be a top secondary project or prospect out there around where we're going to be picking. So that, I feel like that's kind of interesting, right? Maybe a Caleb Downs kind of signal there, but regardless, I like the move because it's a change in philosophy, and it's also acknowledging, like, hey, we got shut out 31 to nothing against this defense. Let's see what that defense is about, okay? Because we haven't had any kind of production like that. So I actually kind of like the move. Is it ideal? I don't think so, based on the options that were out there. But again, based on our situation, I don't think that we were ever going to attract the big names anyway. I mean, that's just my opinion on it.
See and I think your last point there is probably your best one. I'm not sure we were going to attract the big names that I was interested in. And it was such a, it still is, but it's starting to wind down finally. It was such a wild coaching carousel this year. Some of the names I wanted to pull over for a defensive coordinator if Dan Quinn wasn't going to stay on as the defensive coordinator, basically. They got head coaching looks. You already mentioned that. Several of these guys got either head coach interviews or head coach spots. So that started to stagger the list on the defensive side of who was actually available to be hired as defensive coordinators around the league. Out of those groups, which became a smaller pool, how many of them actually wanted to come to Washington and work with the personnel here or wanted to work with Dan Quinn if they felt like maybe he's on his way out the door with one more bad season, or wanted to work for this front office if they feel like they're hearing things they don't like about people meddling. So I think all those things put together, and I'm not saying that all of those things were devastating reasons, but when you put all of that stat together, I think you're right. I'm not sure how many, of the top names we were actually going to pull in here. So going back to Daronte Jones specifically, I haven't seen his work. Nobody has, unless you've actually coached with him and you know what he contributed to the game day plans and to the preparation of the players and all that. We haven't seen him working in this role yet, just like we haven't seen David Blau working in this role. So I'm sure both guys are bright minded, brilliant guys. Obviously, Jones has a ton of experience, and obviously, I like this list of names that he's worked with. So I love all of that. I love the multiple schemes and the aggressiveness. I love that. The one thing I will say here that I'm not a fan of, I'll couch it carefully, the fact that we did go after not one but two unproven coordinators, and that to me seems like an odd and risky tactic for a coach in Dan Quinn who's had one amazing year and one dreadful year. And we even wondered a little bit would he survive the season, right? Well, he did. And instead of bringing in, you would think in his years he would have a Rolodex of somebody he could pull in. He would know able to bring in anybody. And I wonder how much of this has been influenced by the front office actually. If their idea isn't to bring in a couple of young guys who, if they decide Dan Quinn isn't the guy, maybe one of these two guys is head coach in waiting, so to speak, and they don't just clean house completely next year if there's another bad season. So maybe to them, the first thought is, well, let's get in two young guys who weren't at the top of anybody's list. Let's be honest about that. I mean, generally speaking, when you prep the list of the past 2 years, these were not the guys at the top of even the unprovens list, right? They were somewhere on the list. They weren't at the top of the list. Maybe the thought is bring in those guys. Let's give them a chance. Maybe the team is better next year. If not, maybe we like one of these guys good enough to just let them take over the head coach role in spot of Quinn. To me, it felt front office influenced and it felt a little bit odd and a little bit risky. Having said that, I don't have any problem with either of these two guys. Blau, who we already talked about a week or two ago, and Daronte Jones tonight. I don't have any problem with either guy.
I don't either, and I hate to agree with you, but that's kind of what this feels like is okay. I can sell young unproven. Okay. I can sell
Yes,
that to a point where it's like, hey, we don't know what these guys could bring, and it's like that's scary, but it's like that's exciting. It's like look at the
right.
background these two guys have, like not just with their coaching, but like the people that they worked under. It's like and then like from a kind of like when you're looking at the season, it's like, okay, these teams that we're going against, they're not going to know what to expect necessarily. They can probably guess, but they don't know exactly what to expect. But, it feels like, okay, it's like we can, as you said, kind of monitor. It's like, hey, is this guy a guy that we want to keep, even if we, like I, even if we don't go with Quinn, because like, okay, we interviewed Joe Cullen, for example. He's been a defensive line coach for like 20 years. Okay, he's been a defensive coordinator once before, but it's like, is the fan base or anyone, the players, is anyone going to get excited about Joe Cullen as a defensive coordinator? Probably not. Okay,
Probably not.
you know, like. that would be like I would much rather take young, unproven guy than a guy that's does have a lot of experience, granted. But is he going to be a game changer on the defense side of the football? I want to say that he's not, but the likelihood that he is, I feel like if he was a game changer, he would have already been in that role for a lot longer at this point in his career. Daronte Jones, David Blau, they're different. You know, they're younger guys. Now Daronte Jones is a little bit older. He's in his 40s now, so he's not one of these like late 20s, early 30s guys getting into the game. But I mean, I'm excited for it. I'm optimistic about it, but there is the kind of that like underside of this where it's like, yeah, maybe there is some ulterior motive to these hirings. You know, because looking back at it now, I think if Josh Harris and Adam Peters could redo this again, knowing how this coaching cycle was going to go, maybe they let go of Quinn. You know, maybe Josh Harris is like, you know, Adam Peters, sorry, dude. You know, I know you're brand new, but 2 years you haven't done much of anything besides draft Jaden Daniels. You know, I mean, they're in a hard situation. This is a pivotal year. Basically, what it comes down to is this is a pivotal year for not just Dan Quinn, but for Adam
Yeah.
Peters as well, and for Josh Harris, who we're going to talk about here in a minute on who he's going to be as an owner in the NFL. Like we have been so scarred over the past 20 some plus years of just absolute horrible, one of the worst owners in professional sports history. And that's pretty bad when you go back and look at some of the owners that have owned professional sports franchises over the past 150 some years and how bad that actually is. Because, I mean, man, if you're meddling, I'm not saying he is, but like if you're a guy that's like, hey, we're gonna promote this guy and then we're not gonna promote this guy, and then it's getting it. I'm not getting a good feeling. I'm not getting a good feeling about some of the things that have been said, some things that have been done or going to be continuing to be done. I'm not getting the warm and fuzzies. It's not Dan Snyder bad, but it's still not functional, I suppose.
I'm not either. And losing does that, right? Winning hides all of that. Even if you
Right.
got some dysfunction, losing brings every bit of it out for everybody to see. So if we get back to some kind of a competitive year next year, a lot of that will settle down. But I agree with you. A lot of the things that we're seeing and hearing over the past, just few weeks really have not left us feeling warm and fuzzy at all. I do like okay. I'm okay with the idea of these two coordinators coming in, and you do have fresh. That's good, fresh and exciting. And I do have the idea based on listening to people talk that people like these guys and that they respect their mindset and their football IQ. So I'm okay with that too. But still, it just was not the hires I was expecting from a guy named Dan Quinn, who's been in this league a very long time and should know a lot of people, and also for a guy who maybe gets one more year to have his last hurrah here and keep this job for a long time. We all hope. These were not the hires I was expecting. I think it's safe to put it that way. This is more the hires I would be expecting if someone came in for their first ever head coaching job and they just didn't have a big Rolodex. Maybe themselves, they weren't, maybe they had some experience, but they wanted to bring in fresh minds with them. This would be more of the hires that I would be expecting. So I thought the fit was a little odd in terms of that, but I had no reason to think, neither of these guys will be successful. So we'll try it out and see.
So in fairness to that point, which I think just further is more further evidence that Adam Peters and the front office more had to do with these hires than Dan Quinn did. They interviewed Al Harris, and there was one other person from his staff that a previous staff that they had interviewed. I mean, Al Harris, he was a guy that Jerry Jones didn't let us interview in 2024. Like he rejected Dan Quinn from interviewing. So I think actually, if Dan Quinn wanted to bring him in initially as a defensive coordinator, and now you have the opportunity to bring him in based on the work that he had done in Chicago and how, quick turnaround that defense was too over the past couple of years. I mean, it almost feels like, okay, either the interview went horribly or the front office is like, yeah, we don't want more of you. We want something else, you know? I mean that's very interesting is all I'm gonna
Yeah,
say.
that's what it feels like. And I'm not saying that they didn't get Dan Quinn's approval or sign off on this. And I'm not saying necessarily that the front office just came thundering down. I just really doubt that Dan Quinn himself, if the front office left him alone, I really doubt that Dan Quinn himself would have pulled these two names out of the hat. That's just not my feeling.
No, I don't think so either. Speaking of more news to go on is that we've been talking for probably since October
Yes.
about this, on how, and maybe even going into last year, it's like, yeah, this is Duran's last year, and that we thought this was going to be a big contract year for him. Like, we'll either extend him, restructure, or we're just going to cut him loose if he doesn't perform well. Well, quite frankly, he didn't perform well. He had some
Yeah.
bright spots, but overall, he
Yeah.
played rather poorly. Okay. And then
Yep.
excuse me. Ben Standig reported last week that the two sides have focused on Payne playing out the final year of his contract without a financial restructure, pay cut, or extension. Yikes. Okay. $28 million cap hit, the highest on the team for 2026. I can understand wanting to keep him, right? Because you don't have it's one less hole you have to fill, right? We got a lot of holes to fill. And having Daron here allows that's one less thing you got to worry about is possibly the interior of the defensive line. If you work on pass rushers, you work on secondary, it's like, okay, he Daron Payne is a talented player. He can be productive, but one thing he's never been throughout his career is consistent. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe they're just acknowledging that mediocre is enough for this upcoming season, at least on the interior. Because Kinlaw and Payne, that does not get me excited whatsoever. It didn't last year when the moves were made, and it still doesn't now. Uh, I'm fine if you bring him back, but at 28 million, I mean, I understand PFF is not kind to Daron Payne or just interior defenders in general, like space eaters. PFF is not kind to space eaters. Okay. But just look at the stats there. Okay. 4 sacks, one forced fumble, 31 solo tackles. And I think he had 7 tackles for loss. Maybe 14 million, not 28. I would even say 14's high. I could get this production from a guy that's getting paid a third of what you're paying or what we're paying for Payne. I, I don't get this is what causes me to think that either Josh Harris is telling Adam Peters that, hey, we don't want to spend money on these big guaranteed contracts.
Mhm.
I don't believe there's any guaranteed money left on Daron Payne's contract. And what I mean, we'd be saving almost 17 million on the cap, which we're gonna need. Okay. I don't need the contracts of Daron Payne and Javon Kinlaw without the production to eat up a large majority or a large portion of my cap space. I can understand wanting to keep him, but at the current number, and this might not be an accurate report, but I just don't like what this report indicates. It indicates that we're going to yet again be conservative, that we're yet again not going to be in the business of spending money, and if that is the case, Kevin Sheehan, it's a guy that I kind of listen to on the local radio. He said this exact thing where it might be a cash strap situation. Okay, that Josh Harris just doesn't want to spend money. The team felt compelled, someone from the team felt compelled to tell him that is certainly
Mhm.
not the case, and to basically walk back what you said the other day. First of all, I don't even like that. if we have the owner again listening to local media and what's being said there. That that gives me Dan Snyder type of like flashbacks here. And if that's the case, then what has been the reason for not spending money in the past two seasons? I mean, I just don't like what this indicates. Okay. I just I don't like it at all. If you're rewarding mediocre, I don't even know if he was good enough to be mediocre. If you're rewarding poor play with a massive contract or keeping a massive contract, then that's setting a precedent for other players that like, hey, we don't have to play well. We're gonna get paid. There's no consequences to this. I mean, I just don't like anything about this.
There is so much to unpack there. I'm not going to say everything all at once. I'll hit a couple of those items and then bounce it back to you. First of all, I felt like Daron Payne hit the ground running at the start of this season. I thought he came out flaming hot the first couple of weeks. I was impressed by the effort and some of the results, and then it all just kind of disappeared. I mean, slowly it just kind of all went away, and then we got a whole lot more of the Daron Payne that we are used to seeing. To be quite honest about it, I'm actually fine with him being on the team. I have no problem with that. But goodness gracious, at $28 million, there just is no argument for him making 28, not in any capacity whatsoever. I feel like probably the 11 to 14 range is even a bit of a stretch based on what we've come to see. And when you add in the fact that he's 29 and going on 30 at some point, I think next year. So to me, there's no argument for 28. Now, it doesn't hurt my feelings necessarily if he were to stay on the team at this number, only because I do know we have a fair amount of cap space right now, and we're already missing a lot of the guys that were even getting playing time for us last year, right? Whether they deserve to be getting that playing time or not, a lot of them are going. So if you want to make any argument for Payne staying on the team just for somebody being familiar from last year's team, I guess I can see that. My true feeling here is what's behind this is the agent for Daron Payne would really rather just hit free agency this year if and just dare Washington to release him. It's like, yes, we'll take our $11 million over the next season or two in dead cap from you. Whatever, again, there's a couple of bonuses sticking in there. Some of that's already been paid out and the other stuff, right? Let's just take whatever we're getting. Go ahead and release me. I'll hit free agency with Daron Payne at the age of 29 versus next year at the age of 30. I'm sure the agent is fine with that. I'm sure the agent is also fine with Daron Payne collecting his $28 million check this year, whatever it actually turns out to be in game pay this year. Hey, why does Daron Payne's agent need to renegotiate a contract that he knows is not going to be a big one from Washington, right? The Commanders just are not going to hand out another big contract to Payne here. So Payne's agent would either just keep it like it is or go to free agency. Well, then that flips us back over to the Commanders. You can't get a new deal unless you offer a lot of years and money, which of course you're not going to do. So you either release him or keep him. I'd be in favor of releasing him. I don't need that built-in cap, that built-in cap space for 2027. I'm trying to win right now. So if it were me, I'd go ahead and cut him and let's play with the 17 million extra dollars this year. Let's go on a spending spree somewhat similar to what the Patriots did last year, right? Where maybe we don't get top grade players, but we're getting some pretty good players. And yeah, we're probably overpaying a little bit, but it's going to lead to some real upgrades here. I would do that. I really do not. I really just cannot get my head around the reason for keeping Payne on at $28 million. I know why Payne's not going to restructure this contract, but I don't understand really why the Commanders would want to keep him at 28, to be honest.
The only justification that I can, I guess it'd be the only justification is you keep him, he signs a big deal next off season, and then you get a comp pick in 2028. I don't know how big of a comp pick you're going to get, but
Yeah.
I guess that would be the only argument, really.
Yeah,
is that you get continuity. You're not having to fill another hole, and you get a comp pick later on, 2 years from now,
right.
which might be a fourth or a fifth rounder.
I would, yeah, that's what I would say because I don't think it would merit a third. It's probably a fourth or a fifth. Yeah,
I I just don't believe that that's worth. I'd rather have the almost $17 million now to spend in a pivotal year.
yeah, I agree. I figure the agent really here has no incentive to get a new contract from Washington because he knows he's not going to get it. There's no way on this planet that the Commanders are going to offer another 2 or 3 years with more guaranteed money at say even 15 to $20 million levels. They're just never going to do that based on what we've seen out of Daron Payne's playing on the field, right? So the agent's got to know I can get a better deal on the open market if we go there. If not, I'll just keep my $28 million. We'll be happy for this season and then go on the market next year. But you're right about the team. You know, what are the benefits of the team doing this? Well, you get a comp pick at some point. You do get some continuity out of Payne being there this year. You know, that's about it. I maybe it could be posturing from the team as well. I know what the agent's up to here. It could be posturing from the team as well. They could be threatening, saying, "Hey, you know, you may get less than even you may get less than you think you're going to get on the open market based on your play here." You know, so they might be posturing to try to get some kind of a friendly restructure, but they're not going to get that. They're not going to get a friendly restructure out of Daron Payne. So
No,
you know
no, they are
that
not.
you either cut him or you keep him. That's what it's down to.
Yeah, and the upside to this is that he's like, well, I ain't playing here anymore. He's like, I gotta go get my money. This is my last chance, and he's gonna play his heart out.
Yeah,
And he's gonna
right.
go get his money. That's the because it happened 4 years ago where he was in a contract year and he had a career year, 11 sacks. You know, he was a monster all year long. That's the only upside of this is he knows he's going to be playing elsewhere and he needs to play his tail off to, you know, get a big contract, his last big contract. Outside of that, I see no upside to this or anything good coming out of this.
Totally agree. I can't tell you. And thanks to, I really appreciate Spot Track and Over the Cap both. They're both good websites. But when Spot Track first started putting stuff out years ago, I was just all about, you know, exploring these contracts. It is astounding, absolutely astounding in the NFL how many guys have a career year in their contract year. I mean, it's really scary because as an evaluator, you look at a guy play for 2 or 3 seasons and the plays down here, and you get him up to season 3 or 4, and the plays up here, and you're like, well, dang it, which guy am I going to get if I try to re-sign him to a lot of money? You know, did the light finally come on, or did he just put in a whole heck of a lot more effort to get paid? And man, most of the time, probably I don't know, 8 out of 10 times, right? Most of the time, the play drops back off closer to what we saw in the first 2 or 3 seasons. There's enough players whose play did escalate after that to make you ponder giving out the money, you know. But it is scary. I figure one other thing the Commanders could also be doing as far as posturing, if they are threatening to keep Daron Payne on until the summer when we get into this post P61 cut time, right? If they're threatening to actually keep him on till then, most teams would have already spent their money. So it could
Yep.
be that they're trying to threaten Payne and his agent a little bit here, but I don't really think that's the case. I just think I just think it's two sides posturing a little bit, and he's either going to get cut anyway here in a few weeks, or they will keep him on at this number, which I hope they really don't.
I'm hoping not either. But again, it's just a report. It doesn't mean it's reality. So we
Right.
still got a long way to go. So,
Yes, and one of the things I've learned because I'm really bad at this game. The game I'm about to mention here, I'm bad at it. I know I am. I just don't think this way. I'm not wired this way. But usually when something like this comes out, either the general manager put it out there or the agent for the player put it out there. One of
Mhm.
them went to, somebody in the media and talked on purpose because they wanted this information to get out, and I haven't gone through who may want that to be out, but that's usually the case. Somebody here wants something to happen, so they put a little pressure out there in public to say, hey, this is what's really going on here.
All right. So we're talking about the future here. Let's talk about the future of the roster a bit, maybe at a certain position. Uh, because we've done these position breakdowns over the past several weeks in and off and on. Um, you know, when we talk about what's needed on this roster, mainly it's defense side of the football, you know, for obvious reasons. I mean, this was god awful defense, right? But something that we still can't seem to get right, and we haven't really gotten right since Terry has been on this team, is the wide receivers. Okay. Tonight, since we had kind of a jam-packed show tonight, we're just going to cover the prospects. We're going to get to the free agent potentials at the wide receiver position either next week or a week sometime in the next couple weeks. Um,
Yes, very soon.
and also we're gonna do more mock drafts. I hope everyone enjoyed the mock drafts from last week. Which, by the way, I forgot to include that. I guess we have four things. So, me and Ben, after the show, we did a mock draft that was totally different than the one we recorded, and it was so much better. Like when you see what we did, it you're thinking like, well, that's crazy. Why on earth would you do that? And it turned out, at least prospect, nobody knows how it would actually turn out, but prospect wise, it turned out to be so much better than you think could have happened. Okay. Are we getting the quote unquote top end guys that if we stayed at seven? Not necessarily, no, but we're filling holes where we can't if whether we're resistant to spend the money or we just there's not the players out there to spend the money. That this what we did was the best course of action based on the situation that we're currently in. Um, and for the future of the team, I think, not just this season, but I think for the future of the team, because we're so far behind the eight ball in terms of roster building, that we're gonna either we'll share that today, or in another episode. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the mock draft last week. Go check it out if you haven't seen it yet. It's still gonna stand up for the next month, 2 months. Um, we're gonna be doing more of those and reviewing more positions. But for now, the wide receiver group. Did you have anything to comment on while we actually, you know what? I'm gonna stop sharing this just for 1 second, and I'm actually gonna
Do it,
bring it
man.
up. I'm gonna bring it
Bring it
up.
on up. I'll
I'm gonna
talk while
bring it
you're
up.
doing it because
Yeah.
I truly the mock draft that we presented live on air last week was fine. Okay, there's a world in which that could happen, but I was ultimately unsatisfied with any of the breaks that we got because at pick seven we opted not to do a trade. We opted to just take who was there at pick seven. But two of the guys we wanted weren't there at pick seven; they'd already been gone. And then at our second pick, which I think was the third round pick that we really have, the guys that we wanted there were already gone. And then at another round two, I guess it's round five. The guys we wanted there were all gone, so we didn't get any of the breaks on that live on air mock draft. And like you said, once that mock was over, me and you went and did another one, and boy, it was so much better, like you just said. And we did do a trade for that mock, but we didn't have to. The guy that we could have gotten there at seven was a couple of guys we really liked. We did the trade. It offered us so many different things, and actually, yeah, this is a trade that I believe I did right here. Right, this is a
Oh
draft that
yeah,
I
this
did
is
on my
yours.
own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I liked this one better than what broke our way live on air the other night. So I'll let you talk your way through this one if you want, or I will. But this is the one that I did even
Yeah.
later on. But the point is this: the mock draft we presented live on air could happen, but we hope it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. So I actually pulled up the wrong one, so my apologies on that one. This is, can you see, is the one showing now?
Yeah, the one that I did, that's the one
Oh,
showing
okay.
right now.
Let's change that then. Sorry, just on the fly stuff, you know?
It's all right, man. If you're
On the
watching, we
fly.
appreciate you
Yeah,
hanging with us. So
absolutely. I think this is the one here. No, that's not the one there.
while you're looking, I will say the draft that I did that I sent over to you, Caleb Downs was available at 7. And in the live mock that we did on air last week, he wasn't available at 7. And then from there on down, we were able to at least get guys we were interested in that gave us a chance at positions of need all the way down through there. So, for instance, Dominique Orange was sitting there at one of those picks. So I was able to pick him up in that particular. And then
Yeah,
this is the one that me and Robertson actually did last week, live
yes.
off air once we got done with you guys.
Yeah, so basically what we had done was we traded back to, I believe it was 13. I believe we traded back it was either 10 or 13. I think we traded back to 13. Um,
Yes,
and then we had gotten a second round pick and a third round pick, yeah, we got a
I
second
think
round
that's
pick and a
right.
third, I believe.
I believe that's right.
And then we traded back to 26, which you see there, and we netted another second round pick and two third round picks, I believe. And there was a bunch of other stuff in there that we had gotten in total five extra picks over this year and next year, okay? And I mean, now is this totally realistic in terms of return? Probably not. And my guess was when I was telling Ben as we did this, we'd probably push one of these picks that we had received back to next year, in the trades, for various reasons. But if we hadn't, I mean, we're going from having three top 100 picks to what, one, two, three, four, five top 100 picks. So we added two more, and granted, they're not super high. But what it does there is we addressed edge and we addressed safety, and those are the two biggest holes in this defense right now. That's outside corners, one of them, depending on how you consider that. Those are the biggest holes that we have on the team right now. I mean, and you address all of them in one draft, versus now where, okay, it's like, can we use our top three picks on defense? Can we do that? I'd like to, as it currently stands. But this allows us the flexibility if we do that. We trade back twice. And that, I guess it does sound crazy, but look at the return that we're getting. Now, again, the draft is a crapshoot. We don't know what the heck's going to happen. We don't know if any of these guys are going to pan out. But I I just felt like me and you both felt like this was just more flexible and just better for our current situation where we're at.
Agreed. And let me address the two groups that we always have in our audience. There's always the rather large, lovely, intelligent group who offers insight and strategy. And then there's a couple of village trolls that wander in and just want to spout off. So we're not necessarily endorsing this list of players that you see in front of you.
No.
Okay. We're continuing to work our way through all of that. But the point is, by trading back, and it's unusual, but it does happen, by trading back from 7 to 13 and then from 13 to 26, like Robertson said, we were able to net several draft picks. And probably the mock was being a little too generous on the trades we got, but not by a lot. There is legit reason to think, but by moving from 7 to 13 and then 13 to 26, that you could actually get something very similar to what you're seeing right here. Okay. And again, it might be a little bit much. And one of those, probably 71, 77, one of those two picks probably would be a 27 draft pick instead, like Robertson already said. But the point is, like he already said, we got not one, but two edge rushers. And, you know, that's a lot of fun feeling a need right there that one or both guys should be able to feel, getting pressure off the edge on the quarterback. That's Parker and Howell. You get a safety right there in Dylan Thineman, who's a pretty safe kind of a guy, kind of a bet, like the intelligence, like the hitting, the tackling, all of that. With Jadarian Price, you get a pretty solid running back right there. And then you come back with Dominique Orange there at defensive tackle, who's a really, if you haven't seen him, go check him out. Really big guy, good two gap kind of a guy, run stuffing kind of a guy. Probably not high end on the quarterback pressure side of things, but that's what we got Parker and Howell for, right? And then we come back with Carson Beck, who I don't like his decision making or his interception liability, but you talk about a guy with a huge arm, he's got it in spades. So for a backup quarterback in that fifth round there, it wasn't bad. So the point is, if we're interested in doing this kind of a thing, it is available to be done, and it wouldn't look too dissimilar from this. And that's the point that we were both trying to make here.
And the question is going to be over the next until draft day is do we go after a guy like Caleb Downs, Bain, I forget the other pass rusher, Bailey. Do we go after them or do we do what we did and do we go after um, you know, multiple picks? I mean that's going to be the question going forward until we're on the clock on draft day.
It is, and I tell you, most times, most years, I am in the long-standing group of you stay in the top 20 and you get one of those higher end guys that you just can't get in most drafts farther down. And you brought up a great point last week. I don't remember if it was on air or off air, but your average draft, if you were to compare the guy taken in the top 20 versus five guys taken outside the top 20, it's staggering the rate of success for a top 20 guy versus
Yeah.
guys taken in, say, pick 43, 77,
Hmm.
106. It is staggering the difference. So I'm fully okay with us staying at seven, picking somewhat of a top end blue chip kind of a guy there, and filling out the rest of the roster with the cap space that we have, plus hopefully the Daron Payne money, kind of like the Patriots did last year. And then, using whatever picks we have left to just make the best of it for this offseason, right? I'm okay with that. But I'm also okay with trading back here and trying to fill out as many spots on this roster as we can with younger players who are going to be here at least 2 seasons, if not the full 4 seasons, right? I'm
Hmm.
okay with that strategy too, based on what we know about this year's defense.
Yeah, the analogy that I had used was back in the 20, what was that? The I guess 2022 draft is we had pick, I think it was 11, and we could have taken Chris Olave, but we traded back and yielded Jahan picks, but they turned into the Jahan Dotson, Brian Johnson, or Brian Robinson Jr., Sam Howell, Cole Turner, and there was another guy that ended up being nothing. So we could have had Chris Olave, but we traded him for a bunch of guys that didn't have not amounted to anything really on the pro level. So, it's great. Like, oh my God, we fleeced them. We got all these picks, but it's like, okay, yeah, but they got the better player. We have nothing. So three,
Yes.
4 years
And
later.
I totally agree. And I'm sure someone in the audience, and rightfully so, is saying, hey, that's one deal, that's one year. You shouldn't count that either way as far as an evaluation. I would agree. But the stats hold up no matter how you evaluate the success rate of draft picks. First rounders, specifically top 20 guys, their success rate is massively multiples higher than guys in the second round. And guys in the second round, their success rate is multiples higher than the third round. And after the third round, it just falls off the cliff completely. So, there's a lot to be said for, entertaining the idea of staying where we are in spite of how many needs we have. I'm in this specific year, this specific team, I'm finding the direction we go, really.
All right. So enough of that already.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get into what we really want to talk. The main really part of this show was supposed to be was these wide receiver prospects.
Yeah, so here we go. Wide receivers. I'll start the conversation and then we'll bounce it back and forth a little bit. First of all, it's a deep class. I don't personally think it is as star-studded as some years, but I do think it's a very deep class. And I think you can see that when you see how many guys could go in the first round. That's 3 to 6 guys. You look at the first 2 rounds, how many guys could go? That is 10 to 12 guys in the first two rounds. And then even in the first three rounds, you could have anywhere from 12 to 16 guys go in the first three rounds. And they really are guys. I've seen most of them. I've done tape work on most of them. They really are guys that are worth considering adding to your football team, even if they don't necessarily upgrade the room, which some of them will. They will all be an addition to the room and solidify it. Okay, so really good year for picking some wide receivers throughout the first couple of rounds at least.
Yeah, so the first thing that I noticed about this group is one, to how many highly graded players you have here at the position. And two is there's a lot of trees in this group. I mean, there's some tall guys. Most of these guys on here are 6'2" or taller, which
Yes,
I'm when it comes to certain positions, I'm very into measurables. I'm very into height, weight, speed. Like and I'm sure the RAS score is going to be something that's huge. Has been, over the past couple years, especially with this group. Um, I mean, we got guys on here that are 6'4", 6'5". If any of them can run, even a little bit, I would imagine that we're going to be interested in. I would be very interested in that because to me, you can't teach size, you can't teach speed.
I'm in the same boat. I prefer the bigger receivers if they have any kind of speed and athleticism, which some of these guys are a little low on that end, and we'll see that as we go throughout the offseason. I do have to address one particular group in our audience that I know is among us, and they're not wrong. Some of them tend to go a little farther down the spectrum than I do. Yes, right now the NFL is in a window. It's not a long term new way of doing things. It's a window that started several years ago and will keep on going for a while of wanting these smaller, faster guys who work over the middle of the field. They don't necessarily go vertical all that much. They're doing all this stuff, right? Mesh routes, rub routes. I mean, you just name it. And then they start going vertical when you try to cut off this stuff. Yeah, I get it. The reason for that isn't because all of a sudden the NFL wants smaller, faster guys. Okay, that's not it. It's because it's just easier to attack linebackers over the middle right now. That's the easiest spot of the field to work. But that is changing. The NFL slowly, because you can't change overnight, NFL defenses slowly are getting guys from college at the linebacker spot who have better athleticism and better pass defending skills. Okay, so they tend to be a little smaller. They tend to not be as good at stopping the run, but slowly but surely, the NFL is bringing in the linebackers from the college level who have experience in pass protection, most of it in zone, some of it in one on one coverage, some of them converted safeties. So, as that happens, you'll start to see the NFL not quite be so thirsty for the small, fast guys that do all this stuff right here instead of the birds. But no matter what, even if you've got an offense that needs a guy who can run over the middle and he's small and fast, you still have to have the bigger, taller guys who can win one on one. And you mentioned it, man. If you've got a 6'4" guy going up against a 5'10", 5'11" cornerback, the laws of physics take over at a certain point. So you still need those taller, bigger receivers out there at least probably three of the four receiving spots. You just can't put together a team of small guys. That's just not the way to build the roster. And I know there have been a few exceptions to that over the years, but in general, you need the taller guys, and you can add one smaller, faster guy in there somewhere.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You know our situation. Um,
Yeah.
who on this list do you, or maybe you can name a couple of guys if you wish. Who on this list is going to be the best running mate for Terry? Now, obviously, we don't know the offensive scheme, but we know Terry's skill sets. Okay, we know what works with Terry, what doesn't work with Terry. We know that he needs somebody to run with. Okay, I think Debo is, whether you bring him back or not, I still don't think he should be considered a number two. I mean, he was okay this year, but averaging 10 yards a catch, maybe that was the offense. Maybe that was a myriad of factors, I'm sure. But I still don't really consider him at this point. I'm maybe a low number two, um, probably a higher end three, a gadget guy. I wish there was a separate gadget receiver category because he'd be the number one guy on it. But as a true wide receiver, who do you think on this list would be the best running mate for Terry?
I I'll just start at the top. I mean, where else we're going to start? So for me, it's Carnell Tate. He's been the healthiest. He's the tallest out of those top three guys, and he's shown that he can not only work the short in 24. He showed he could work boundary and the middle, but in 2025, he showed he could work deep as well consistently. You could see him working deep. So there's nothing he really can't do. The hands, the toughness is all there. The speed's pretty good. It's not elite speed, but it's there. There's really nothing here for Carnell Tate that you're missing. So that looks like the most legit long-term NFL ready receiver, and I think he would work very well opposite of Terry McLaurin because you really can get him to do anything. So that I would start right there with Carnell Tate. And I've been tempted. Listen, me and you are on the same page about this defense thing, man. You entered the draft and it's defense, defense, defense. And yet I've run 30 or so mocks so far just doing the Commanders. A couple of times, receivers are sitting here and the defensive player I want is not sitting here. And I've grabbed Carnell Tate a couple of times here at the 7 pick. So, it's not an option that you can just completely turn out the window.
Man, I just yeah, I know that there's going to be people that are in, that are if you disagree with that, like let us know in the comments. But I know there's going to be people that are saying,
Yeah,
well, that's stupid. Why would you draft a receiver at 7 when that's not our top priority?
right.
That's fair, but one, I would ask you, is Carnell Tate worth the seventh overall pick? And then second, like, do you disagree with that? Like, would you rather trade back at that point and accumulate more picks or stay at 7 and pick Tate?
I'd rather trade back and grab the extra picks and stay defense heavy. That's my preference. So I really would. Carnell Tate in an average draft, I don't really view him as top 10. I view him as more top 20, solid top 20 is really where I have him. In this particular draft, though, yeah, I would be surprised if he doesn't go top 10. He's that good and out of the players that are available in this year's draft.
So who down the list that maybe isn't a first that doesn't have a first round grade on them that you can maybe get in the second if we trade back, or maybe if we pick up an extra third round pick, like who in that area would be a good running mate?
If you can get them, a couple of guys I really like here. Let's go with average height guys. Okay, just good receivers. Chris Bell out of Louisville, late first, early second, and then Elijah Surratt, definitely a second round pick. I'm higher on Surratt than a lot of people, but I really feel like once the NFL starts taking a look at these guys and not just the mock draft people, I feel like Surratt's going to work his way up the board a fair amount here. You talk about a guy who could do anything. Elijah Surratt out of Indiana. This guy can work boundary, middle, deep. He's not blazing fast, but boy, the hands are great. The physical catches that he makes, it's all beautiful. He doesn't get a lot of separation except over the middle. He's got a nice West Coast middle route that he runs. He can get separation on that. He won't get tons of separation downfield or at boundary, but he still makes all the catches there. So really, really, really solid wide receiver sitting right there in the second round. But also Chris Bell. Chris Bell's yards after the catch are very impressive, and you can see he's kind of a chunky guy there at 220, coming in 6'2", 220. Again, not blazing speed, but the speed is good, and the yards after the catch are really good. You talk about a guy, he's not necessarily going to go break you 50-yard touchdowns, but a guy who can get you, 15, 20, 30 yards after the catch, and don't be surprised. Again, not a ton of separation there for Chris Bell, but just a really solid receiver that would, I think, upgrade our receiver room, to be honest.
So a couple times last week when we were doing our mocks, you had advocated for Brazel out of Tennessee. Tell me about him.
To be fair, I'm not a Brazel guy. And yet, if all you did was watch the highlights of Chris Brazel, you would be like, heck yeah, let's get that guy. It's when you turn on the rest of the tape, you're like, well, dang it, no, let's not bring this guy in. Highlights only. Tennessee looked to him every time they needed a big play, and they play against the best defenses, some of the best defenses in the country, right? Every time they needed a big play, 3rd and 11, you look to Brazel. You need a 40-yard touchdown, you look to Brazel. So he's a huge, big play kind of a guy. You see it there. What is he? 6'5", 200, good speed. Probably, I think, better speed than what Surratt and Bell have to offer. He got that good long stride. Problem is, his blocking is just terrible. He does not sell routes at all. And on the average play, let's say it's 1st and 10, 2nd and 6, he was usually the third option that the quarterback looked at. They just did not look to him for down to down production. It's all big play stuff. So that's the synopsis there on Chris Brazel out of Tennessee.
Is there anyone else on this list here that that we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, listen, there's several guys here, and again, it depends on where you're picking, right? Because if we trade back, there's guys
Hmm.
sitting there that won't be sitting there later. It does tend to run out for me after the Brazel Bernard sector. I feel like talent wise, you're dropping down a fair amount there. So let me just offer quick things here on three guys. Okay, one is Jacoby Lane out of SoCal, 6'4", 200, very physical. Think more in terms of Plaxico Burress or T. Higgins. The size and physicality is all there. There are speed questions for sure. And yet that size tends to win out. AJ Brown, you had speed concerns with him coming out of the draft. He's just not a fast guy. And yet, he worked out. So when the size is there, you can take a little bit of slower speeds. You wouldn't want to fill your team with that, right? But the size is there. He is devastating in the red zone, but he showed he could do other things at SoCal as well. So that's a good pick. Another guy, Kevin Concepcion, if we were to be sitting there late first, early second. Again, he's a small guy, 5'11", 190, but he plays physical and he's fast and he turns touchdowns. This guy will cash in for touchdown from 40 yards real quick. Okay. If you lose him in zone, he's gone. Just the speed is there, the hands are there, the physicality is there. It's just that he's 5'11", so you can't vault him up too high there. And then the last guy I'll talk on is Denzel Boston, son of a former NFL player. For those of you who recognize the last name, six foot
David
four, two.
Boston.
Yeah, absolutely, 6 foot
Yeah.
four, 210. Not as physical as you would want a guy that size to be. He just isn't. It's not that he's not physical. You would just expect a guy like that to be physically dominant. He's not, but the hands are good. The route running is good. The feet are very polished. It's just not overwhelming production, overwhelming physicality. But again, nice receiver sitting right there. So Denzel Boston.
Yeah, the most depressing part is guys that I grew up watching now have kids that are in the NFL, and uh, that's the depressing part here. But it doesn't sound like based on and we've done this for a while, right? You don't sound overly thrilled or overly excited about really any of these guys. I mean, there are guys that are intriguing you, I can tell, but you're not
Yes,
really sold on any of these guys necessarily. Maybe Tate, but that's about it.
I would agree. There are lots of guys here I would love to have. There's no doubt they would upgrade our wide receiver room, but I don't have to have hardly any of them. I'm really not going to be like, oh, darn, I didn't get that guy or that guy. It just, the covet factor is not very high. One problem with that is when you compare them to the group of receivers that may be coming in 2026, there are some beasts, I mean, animals coming. Anybody from Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State to Cam Coleman, who went from Auburn to Texas. You talk about guys with size and speed and highlights and consistency, just real animals coming. What the draft was, I forget, 3-4 seasons ago, where we had like four wide receivers picked in the top 15, 16, something like that. This is not that. This is not that group. They're not as big and fast, right? But still, it is a deep group. You can be happy with a lot of these guys. I don't know that you're going to be super excited by a lot of these guys once you get past Tate and Tyson. I know I didn't mention Jordan Tyson. He'll be drafted top 15 for sure. Real playmaker there as well. But yeah, I agree. One last thing, I'll catch up on the back end of this group here. Guys that might be taken third to fifth round. If you're looking for size, you can still get it way back there. Bryce Lance and Ted Hurst. There's size there. Small school guys, but the size is there. Representative speed. if you want a smaller guy who you like the route running in the hands and the scootability factor, Skylar Bell from Connecticut sitting back there, not third round, maybe fourth round. Really enjoyed watching his tape as well. If you want another big guy with a little bit of shiftiness but not high end speed, that's Malachi Fields from Notre Dame, sitting there at 6'4". He might even be 6'5". Big guy, massive frame, more like a tight end frame, but he's got quick hips. They would throw the ball out to him in the flat and let him make a guy miss sometimes. Now he would only get 8 yards. He wouldn't get 30, but still, you're getting something there that can produce something. So there are guys lower down here that still are worth drafting as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if we target receiver, I would want it to be later in the draft. Um, the only rationale that you can justify is if this guy's just going to be a transformational receiver that's going to be franchise changing, offense changing, like, you
Yeah.
know, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase like receiver. But even then, I just disagree with selecting this year, selecting an offensive player in our first three picks, honestly. The guy better be a day one starter, day one Pro Bowler for us to do something like that.
I, I would generally agree with you. It would be 9 times out of 10 in this scenario that I would not pick the wide receiver, even if it's a guy I really like. Probably the only way I would stick and pick at 7 with a wide receiver would be the defensive players I liked are gone, and I can't get a trade back that I'm happy with. I feel like I'm getting cheated. So that's really the only scenario where I would stick and pick a wide receiver at anywhere high. That's not usually going to happen, right? That's the low end of the percentages. Yes.
Right. Right. All right. Unless you got anything else, man. That was a packed. That's probably we're running a little thing over an hour now, but that was a packed show.
Yes, that was a lot. We really appreciate everybody watching. We enjoy it. We enjoy doing the work. So check out everything else we got going on here.
Yeah, before we go, do you want to kind of go over the recent videos that we've released?
Yeah, listen, everything we do here is quality. We don't put together any junk. We're not hot take guys. We're not first take guys. We're not last take guys. We're quality take guys. Okay, we're adults coming in with some quality opinions that we've studied, and if that's what you like, then that's what we're here for. So uh, we're continuing to put out prospect videos like Denzel Boston. You can see it just came out a few days ago. We're continuing to do the Commander stuff. So go check it out if you're into the NFL draft and if you're into the Commanders. Both things will be up all this offseason here on Pro Football Enterprises.
Again, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, set notifications for when Ben does release any of these videos. I mean, again, we're getting close to draft season. I mean, we are in probably the thick of draft season unless you're watching the playoffs and everything, unless your teams are
Right.
still one of the two fan bases where your team's still left in it. Um, but I mean, Ben and Box Score too, Box Score Network, please make sure you subscribe to them too. I mean, between you and Box Score, I mean, there's so many different uh draft prospects that you guys are doing legit work on, not just watching a highlight reel and commenting on it, like you guys are doing legit work on it. So, um please go check them out, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you have your alerts set because I mean, if you're big into the draft, you're gonna want to hear these guys' thoughts and opinions on these guys.
I really appreciate it. The last thing I'll say is when you see us talk about a prospect, we will include some things that an NFL scout might point out, like their quick twitch or their sinking hips or their high ability to high point of football. We'll have that in there. But we also try to be more on the practical side, which is how does this guy do versus man? How does this guy do versus zone? How well do these wide receivers block? We will not put out a wide receiver video without telling you how well they block because we've studied it. All right, we've gone out of our way to find out this stuff. Okay, so we try to be very practical about this as well, not just give you the attributes that a guy has, and then you have to translate that language, right? We really try to be practical with it.
All right. Hope you'll see you all next week. Probably going to be doing another mock draft next week, cover wide receiver free agents and maybe a couple other things too. Who knows what's going to happen over the next few days, next week. So we'll see you all then.